So our next speaker is the 2022 Blind Australian of the Year, and is somewhat a force of nature. Since losing his eyesight in a train accident at age 14, he's since built his career utilising the opportunities presented by such a disability. He's a lawyer. He's got a PhD and associate professor at University of Queensland Law School. He works with the government. He works with Harvard University. He works with United Nations. And if the technology is working properly, I'm hoping we've got Paul there. I am delighted to introduce Associate Professor Paul Harpur. Paul, are you there? You need to hit the magic button. Maybe not. Paul, can you hear us? Okay. Oh, Paul, you're muted. Oh, here we go. We can't hear you, Paul. You're muted. You need to hit unmute at your end, or maybe we can do the magic at our end. We have powerful right-click ability. Getting there.
How about now?
Hey, okay.
Yeah, sorry, there was a pop-up button that said, "Do you consent to being recorded?" And I do, but until I hit that, that was being blocked out. Now I'm here. Can you see me? You can hear and see me?
Paul?
Yes.
Everybody can see you. We've got a room of, I don't know, well over 100 people spread out across. And of course, you're also been recorded for posterity on the internet. Over to you.
Well, I'll kick off then. Thank you very much for this invitation. So, where am I? Sorry, I mean, being an academic, I entitle everything I do. So I've called my speech "Living with Disability Rights." Well, because the rights I'm going to talk about today are being more lived today than they were but a few years ago. I'm not saying we have ability equality yet, but we are well and truly on that journey. So why do I say we're on that journey? Okay, being a parent with a child with a disability, it can get exhausting. Being a person with a disability, it can be exhausting. Well, one of the greatest problems we all encounter are experts that do not have expertise in disability inclusion, but they often think they are. So we get, say, a software designer who thinks they understand disability inclusion, but don't. Educators as well, academics who think they get it, but they don't really. We also have other experts who purport hold expertise beyond their actual expertise. So you can trust experts in their expertise, but when it comes to disability, other parts, sometimes they don't. So an ophthalmologist who are an architect, occupational therapist, an NDIS advocate, or a lawyer like myself, we all have areas where we have heaps of expertise, but also areas we aren't experts. So for me, I'm a disability rights advocate and lawyer. So I get the law and I use technology, but I'm not an expert on technology. Now, I am always amazed just how quickly technology advances, and I always feel like I'm out of touch. Now, saying similarly, you're saying ophthalmologist. Now, they're experts on eye conditions and hugely beneficial, but they may not understand everything around disability inclusion in the workplace. Now, I say this because as a parent with a child with a disability, or as a person with a disability, you need to become an expert on aspects of disability where experts may not get it. Now, I had this real world example with my son. Now, he had a pediatrician appointment. Now, they are absolutely fantastic at their job. Now, they made some comments about his education, which I got to say were a little bit outdated, nicely. And I'm like, no. But and some of the stuff that happened, I'd sue, and I know as a lawyer that I'd win. Now, it wasn't worth raising there, but then I became a filter for my son, who said, look, the doctor knows huge amount about what she expertise, but the education stuff she was talking about didn't really align with the new rights framework, or in some aspects with some of the policy changes which have been brought in. So this isn't to bag the profession. It's simply that the changes that are happening so fast in both the right space in particular, they're so fast that we need to keep up to speed. And I mentioned technology, and AI is a huge example of that. So my son uses Sora, I think it's called, on an iPad at school. Now that's universal design. When I was at school, I pay for it, and I still use specialist technology because I prefer it. But the point is, these changes have come in, and I struggle to keep up with them, even though I'm in this space. So that's this idea of universal design. It's really important, and there is a lot of rights framework supporting that. So let me turn to rights. You've all heard about the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, or the CRPD. This has swept in a number of fundamental changes. Persons with disabilities used to be regarded as basically discounted citizens. So under the human rights rules, we were subject to rights, but we weren't full rights agent. Now, the drafting process for the CRPD started in 2001. So the mantra of nothing about us without us became then enshrined in the drafting process and into the convention when it was adopted only in December 2006, commenced for Australia in 2008. So just think about that, how short period ago that really is, that we didn't really have international human rights. So now, some of the rights we do have, so one of the rights is around disability inclusion. Now one of the rights is around disability inclusion. So when you have policies, practices are being designed by people with disabilities should be present. So you'll now see more people with disabilities on boards, on committees, more present than ever before in those spaces. And that's making a huge impact. Now, if it's disability specific, say like the NDIS, then it has a higher standard of nothing about us unless it's led by us, nothing about us unless it is led by us. Now that's really powerful. And that's why you'll see the NDIA board now is disability led. 6 out of the 12 are people with disabilities on that board, and the chair, which makes it a majority board. And so that's just one example where Bill Shorten just very recently has changed it. And you see a lot of other organizations out there really trying to have people with disabilities not only on the board, but leading. And that's obviously, now you think about how quickly we've changed. That creates, there's a gap of people with disabilities with the right experience, the right qualifications. Well, it's where we could do things like mentor someone to be on the board or to get experience. So, and like a center, or university, how do we get those people with disabilities into those positions? And it is hard. And I mean, I've talked about mentoring just then. When I started running the disability inclusion group at the University of Queensland back in 2015, we had 4.4% of our entire student population having a disability, 4.4%. Now we have 10.85%, so more than 1 in 10. So a huge increase. So within that student population, we can draw from them. And recruitment into the workforce, it's a lot more tricky. Unfortunately, there's a lot more, it's not as good as it could be now, but we do have more people with disabilities now in the sector. The university's a core discussion paper had about 9% of students across the country, which is about 144,000 students, 144,000. So we're hit present. Now, it's a real change. And this doesn't mean we kick aside all those people who've been helping us, like allies. So, you know, as a parent, we help people in the hope that one day, you know, they'll get up and become successful. And parents with disabilities, they are the people that make the difference in your children's lives and get them, you know, protected and really help them create belief. And so disability allyship is huge, and it's not about replacing all those people that are helping people with disabilities. Now the expectation is that we have inclusive boards, that we have a mix now, and that's similar to the gender movement. You see, back in the day, there was no women ophthalmologists, OBGs. Now I think 85% of women, sorry, OBGs are women. At least that was some stats I saw in America. You know, back to, so for us, for children with disabilities and for people with disabilities, this change is really amazing. It gives us leadership opportunities now to take opportunities. Now, to take up those opportunities, though, it means we've got to get ready, and in a very short time frame, because if you think about the suffragettes, I just referenced women, that happened over 100 years. The disability movement has sort of crammed it in a couple of decades. Now, so it's good for if you students with disabilities can become champions and understand their rights framework. So about the CRPD, also get your head around how organizations run, boards, corporate law. There's a lot of training there. And I saw Sydney Uni had some a course, an executive course on disability recently, which was pretty exciting. The Australian Institute Company Director has a disability program running now. Now, all of these changes are really profound and really exciting. So if we think about education, just education, now we've had anti-discrimination laws in Australia since the early 90s. So it's been a while, but the human rights framework in the Convention of Rights of Child only applied to primary school. So high school, there was no real international human right that applied to people with disabilities. Now the CRPD, Article 24, we have a right to lifelong learning. So, and there's a lot of specifics in there about what that requires from people. And that really does enable people to point to what this new rights framework is if you're going to finishing high school, to TAFE, to university. And even though you can't litigate the CRPD rights in Australia, they create norms, and that universities and other good organizations want to be complying with. So for example, the right to access in Article 9, the idea is we have equal right to access. It's not realized, to be honest, very often. I mean, who has an access to, if you're blind and gone onto something, a website, and gone, oh my God. But to say that we're not making changes, it's huge. Now let's just think about books. Like, I used to access instructional materials every night. I'd take stuff home, scan it at lunch breaks to get access to what was handed out in class. These things were handed out as paper. Now in class now, a lot of it's sent digital, or the books, ebooks, and you can click on them and read them at the same time, at the same cost as everybody else. It's an amazing change. Now, there's still a lot of other things. If you're a parent, you're going, well, how about bullying? What about teacher aid support? And still the built environment. There's a lot of things we need to work on. But we've got to realize the CRPD is really only being implemented for Australia from 2008. So if you're looking at if you're working in the NDIS, you're working in the university, a lot of these people are only, they studied their courses, they've got a lot of their training before this new framework. We've got a long way to go, but I've got to say, it's changed so much. in such a short period. Now, it's also not just education. We've also got rights to work. Now, I'm going to say work is going to be hard. It's going to be hard to get in. But I've got to say, just it's a lot more successful. You heard, I mean, I do quite all right as paid as a professor. I'm on a commercial board. I've got friends who are special counsel who are blind, Google analysts in Sydney. There's judges, that are blind. It's just the opportunities now that we have, we didn't have 10 years ago, didn't have 20 years ago. So you continue that trajectory. I believe the opportunities we have today, there'll be more opportunities in 10 years than there are today. And technology is helping that, rights are helping that. And by understanding what's out there, we can help that journey continue. Thank you.
I want to touch on a few of the things you said there.
Sure.
You mentioned that basically the law is evolving and visibly improving, but it's complicated. And even as a professional whose job is to know the law, it's a race to keep up. And then it has to flow through multiple layers. It needs to flow through government. It needs to get down to institutions, be that a university, be it a school, before it even then gets down to the people who run those institutions, let alone the teacher in the classroom and the support workers. Now, and you mentioned that often as a parent is in an advocacy position and isn't going to be able to be fully up to date. So how does a parent, does a student, or does an advocate in the classroom for a student, how do they put themselves in a position where they don't feel that they're alone representing maybe a set of positions or rights that they don't fully understand? How do they get support? How do they feel that they're part of a community that can help?
Well, I mean, my wife's on social media, and I mean, it's like a lot of other parents are on social media. That's just a community people come together and share. That's valuable in itself. That has made it a lot easier. There's also the formal process, like the Human Rights Commission. They have fact sheets on education, the NDIS, and I've got to say, it is really complicated. I think lawyers have made it complicated to make money. It's just, I can't think of any other way. There's so many. It's so complex.
Well, you're a lawyer. You're meant to be standing up for them, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're in a room full of doctors, so ask them, is the health system working? It's better than it has been, and I think but it is really, really complicated. And one of the things I find I've written papers on strategic litigation, so it's really important to always know your right, know as much as you can. So when someone tries to load rubbish on you, you can say, oh, doesn't quite agree with what I think the law says. But the trouble is, if you get lawyers involved, usually the process goes to really long and expensive. And sometimes, particularly at universities, there's ways of getting change done in a way that's more working directly with university administration. So at UQ, for example, I proposed a group back in 2015 to help the university implement its disability action plan. So basically, I think the way they were running was expensive and inefficient, and I could create efficiencies and save money and get better outcomes. And the university's like, okay, saving money, better outcomes, that's something we can always look at. And over the years, we've done a lot of that and saved, reduced costs, increased benefits to students. And once you've got those runs under the board, then like at the function last night, the VC came across to me and had a chat, because I'm going down to, I'm part of the going to Parliament House on the 10th of August to helping around the drafting of the university's accord process. She comes up to me and talks to me about things. So then you have access where other things can come out that cost money because you've got a proven track record. So we need people that are litigating and angry, but we also need people inside who can work with educators to actually create solutions that are workable.
So it's interesting you say that, because obviously when there's such a flow of change that needs to happen through, different parts of the system are going to change at a different pace. So you're going to have some institutions that'll change more progressively, more quickly, others that'll lag behind. So as a little person just trying to get through an education system, whether it's primary, school, or university, where, as you said, you as an individual, you don't want to be the one who has to go and spend time in court solving some future person's problem. How do you find the path through? What are your tricks to, I suppose, ensure that you find the path that is most able to support your rights?
Well, if you're thinking like primary school, I mean, if it's a bit hard. If you're state school, have to go to the local one normally. If you're going to private school, you can shop around a bit. But if you're thinking about university education or TAFE, there's a lot of disability collective where there's students, and so reach out to the students before you apply and see what they're saying. Because some and even down at a university, some faculties will be different than other faculties, and you can try and pick which ones are more accessible. They do a lot of that. In America, it's even bigger because people move a lot more. But I mean, like in Sydney, you've got a lot of options at universities, and same in Melbourne, even in Brisbane. So where there's options, try and pick something, but also pick the place where you're going to find it easier. But also you pick your course. I mean, there are, if you Google blind physicians, there are blind people out there who, operate and do things, which is interesting. There's blind mechanics. You can imagine those two professions. There's a lot more challenges than, say, a blind physio, or so there's jobs where there's naturally an easier career path. So the career path to become a blind lawyer, blind judge, is a lot easier than, say, a blind physician. I mean, I can remember years ago when I was doing sport and someone said they were studying medicine and they were totally blind. And I was like, well, that's hard. Why have you not done more? It's easy. Like it was, you can do there's a lot of lawyers out there earning lots of money that are blind. So it's you don't have to break the ice. So that's, if you want to be a trailblazer, there's always going to be more work.
Are there any questions? I've got a few more. If you ask a question, I'll repeat it for posterity on the recording.
So Paul, Matthew Hancock here. We've been talking about inclusion and belonging committees and companies and the work you're doing with committees like that and champions in organizations. I thought it'd be really good to share that as well, as knowing who you can go to, and that there are these elements in large organizations now that actually have structures to support people. I just thought it interesting to get your thoughts on it because you're so involved in that kind of thing.
I think those committees are hugely influential. So I think Matt was asking about the employee resource groups, essentially in organizations. They're huge. I think those sort of groups are really powerful because in most cases they have access to the CEO. So I run the disability inclusion group, and I think I technically report to a deputy provost, but I also report to the Senate. So, and to the vice chancellor. So the point is, if there's a problem and there's no workaround, sometimes these groups can help find a workaround and get it fixed quicker than the roadblock. I think a lot of it's like traffic lights. When you ask the question, you might have a policy person and they're a red. They just go, stop, can't figure it out, it's too hard, don't know can't think outside the box. And then you'll have someone who's an amber who might be trying but not sure. And then you got the green who knows the way he can get the answer. Well, you just keep those sort of employee resource groups, and those they're often the greens, and they know where all the resources are and how it should operate. And so they're really powerful, both as an employer for the employer and for students and for people trying to work within the organization.
So in other words, you're not just alone. You will usually find that there will be some form of formal group, even within the institution you're in, or maybe above or around, and it'll have surprising level of access to cut multiple levels above.
Yeah. Well, if you think about, they say 20% of the population has some disability. And depending how you dice that, and so there's 400,000, I think, on the NDIS, which, money, the government's giving out money, so they're pretty reluctant to give away money. So, that out of a population our size, that's a lot of people that know someone with a disability or will have someone with a disability working in your organization. So you've got a lot of people that actually want to fix the problem. And I found, I've been interviewing vice chancellors, and I've been surprised how many VCs and see, the leadership actually have disabilities, and people don't really know about it, or have it in their family, and are actually more interested in getting something done. And so by presenting them workable solutions, they're a lot more interested than I thought they would have been.
I'll ask a couple of questions that we had posted before.
Yep.
So one, you touched on a little bit, so access rights from publishers, so access to materials, and this especially in the school setting, but it'd be interesting even outside of the education setting as well. So at the moment, publishers are asking for parents in schools, for example, to buy a physical copy, and then they will unlock the digital copy, which is unusual. You end up putting something on the shelf that never gets opened because it's a book. Where is that industry going? What are the rights around access to media, both within education and outside of education? And how clear cut is that?
Well, if everyone's got to purchase the book, then you're on the same setting as everybody else. So, but if that was me, I would, if I knew that was going to happen, buy the book super early. The second I purchased it, send the copy, the evidence to the publisher, and then stick it straight on eBay, and and sell it within, and you'd probably sell it for almost that cost. And so that would just be my practical approach.
You'll have to put your TikTok hacks up,
or even buy a copy. Go to one of your friends who's buying it and say, "Can I get a copy of the receipt? I'll buy you a coffee for it." Explain why.
Legal advice. Here we go. I heard nothing.
Yeah, but I obviously have a dim view of publishers forcing them to do that. Years ago we started. Anyway. But that's just the practical thing.
You've heard it here, folks. There we go. Before I ask the next question, would anyone like to ask another question? Paul won't bite you. He's very accessible. Okay. Well, I've got the written down one. Do you feel that the actual system itself, the education system, is going to change drastically or noticeably over the next 5 years, or is the process more slow?
Well, the education system's got the primary school, I suspect, has got a lot of hard work to go. Honestly, I think that one of the challenges is at the moment, if you look at the teachers, they're all hammered. They all feel hammered and they're all overworked now. So trying to cope with all the changes is going to be very challenging for them. I'm hopeful that some of the reforms that Minister Clare, they've got education changes to this the early childhood, this education system, and then tertiary. So they're all meant to make changes, but I mean, big changes are slow. But I think a lot of the technological changes will make it more inclusive for us, and I think parents are becoming more discerning. That's why we've got so many more kids getting homeschooled now. Because parents is going, look, I'll just pay my own way and find another way around this. So I'm hoping there'll be changes, but I find it hard to imagine that the system which has been entrenched for so long will be easy to shift. Culture change is hard.
Excellent. Now we're getting close to time. I'll just say, for people who want to go and find easily accessible versions to answer their questions about how to get help, about what the rights are for themselves or those they're advocating for in an accessible form that doesn't require legal knowledge or a technical background to access, do you have a particular guidance about kind of your go-to starting point?
The Human Rights Commission, they've got a note on education. It's pretty helpful, but I mean, if it's an NDIS question, you get really well armed before you go and then fight and then argue and then keep fighting, unfortunately. But that's just, and be self-managed. Don't let them manage it.
Fantastic. This is your last opportunity. If you've got a question, get it in now before I thank Paul. Okay. Thank you, Paul.
No worries, guys. Good luck. And by the way, one last thing, it might look really hard, and it is hard, but it's a lot better than it has been. When I lost my eyesight when I was 14, they suggested, some people were suggesting a sheltered workshop. Now we're suggesting to the boardroom and the CEO position.
Excellent. Fantastic. Have a great day. Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for that. Have a good one.